So I was mentioning last week that this canto has a special place among all the 49 cantos of Savitri. In that it is not part of the narrative. Only the very first line refers to King Aswapati. The rest of this canto refers to the secret knowledge which has been given to him through the action of the goddess of inspiration, and which has brought about his mind and body's first spiritual change. And this knowledge Sri Aurobindo is sharing with us in this canto. We can read it and study it and go more and more into depth with it, because it's a summary of all the basic knowledge which is underlying this poem. Later on in Book 10, Sri Aurobindo will elaborate on this. But now, just to give us a start, he's given us this very special canto. And it has, I think, 7 sections. We started reading the first one, in which Sri Aurobindo tells us that this world is a beginning and a base where life and mind erect, build up their structured dreams. But to build up reality, an unborn power must build reality, a power which has not manifested yet. We know matter, we know life, we know mind, but there are other levels also. And he tells us that a death-bound littleness is not all we are. And he explained, we were reading about how human beings can have at special moments wonderful experiences which are very, very different from the ordinary daily life. No? So I'm reading on from line 65. In moments when the inner lamps are lit and the life's cherished guests are left outside, our spirit sits alone and speaks to its gulfs. A wider consciousness opens then its doors, invading from spiritual silences a ray of the timeless glory stoops a while to commune with our seized, illumined clay, and leaves its huge white stamp upon our lives. In the oblivious field of mortal mind, revealed to the closed prophet eyes of trance, or in some deep internal solitude witnessed by a strange immaterial sense, the signals of eternity appear. The truth mind could not know unveils its face. We hear what mortal ears have never heard. We feel what earthly sense has never felt. We love what common hearts repel and dread. Our minds hush to a bright omniscient. A voice calls from the chambers of the soul. We meet the ecstasy of the Godhead's touch in golden privacies of immortal fire. These signs are native to a larger self that lives within us by ourselves unseen. Only sometimes a holier influence comes, a tide of mightier surgings bears our lives, and a diviner presence moves the soul. Or through the earthly coverings something breaks, a grace and beauty of spiritual light, the murmuring tongue of a celestial fire. Ourself and a high stranger whom we feel. It is and acts unseen as if it were not. It follows the line of sempiternal birth, yet seems to perish with its mortal frame. Assured of the apocalypse to be, it reckons not the moments and the hours. Great, patient, calm, it sees the centuries pass, awaiting the slow miracle of our change in the sure, deliberate process of world force and the long march of all-revealing time. Would you like to start today?
In moments when the inner lamps are lit and the life's cherished guests are left outside, our spirit sits alone and speaks to its gulfs.
Mm-hmm. So these are special moments which can just happen or which we can create for ourselves. When we create those moments, when we leave all the cherished guests, all the interests, all the contacts, all the thoughts of normal things, we leave those outside and we go deep inside ourselves so that our spirit has the chance to sit alone and speak to its gulfs, its deeper parts, not always be on the surface. Yes.
A wider consciousness opens then its doors, invading from spiritual silences. A ray of the timeless glory stoops a while to commune with our ceased illumined clay and leaves its huge white stamp upon our lives.
Yes. So when our spirit has the chance to speak to its gulfs and we are listening to that conversation, then what may happen is that a much wider consciousness than our normal surface awareness. It's as if it opens up its doors and something comes down to us from the higher levels. It comes invading, it comes rushing in from those spiritual silences, like a ray of light, a ray of the timeless glory. It's as if it bends down to touch us for a moment, to commune, to communicate, to have a conversation with our seized, illumined clay. The clay refers to the matter of our bodies, our physical being. But that physical being gets seized by that light and power, gets lit up by it. And that, if an experience like that comes to us, it's life-changing. It leaves a huge white stamp upon our lives. It leaves an impression which will never fade away completely. Mother says if we've had the blessing of an experience like this, we can always remember it and prepare for the way for other experiences to come. Mila.
In the oblivious field of mortal mind, revealed to the closed prophet eyes of trance, or in some deep internal solitude witnessed by a strange, immaterial sense, the signals of eternity appear.
Yes. So we are living mostly in this field of mortal mind, the mind that is subject to death, that belongs to this physical world. And that mind has forgotten, oblivious. It refers to forgetting. This mind has forgotten what is our origin, what is the purpose of our lives here. So this mortal mind, this surface awareness, it's an oblivious field. But he says in that oblivious field, if we're in that special state, the inner lamps are lit and we are deeply concentrated, we may enter into a special state of trance. The outer eyes are closed, but the inner eyes open. And then we see signals of eternity, signs, intimations. Or that may happen if we're concentrated deep within, in some deep internal solitude, when we've left all the other things outside. Then a different kind of sense. We have our material senses, our physical senses, our sight, sense of vision, of hearing, of taste and smell and touch. But in the inner worlds, we have immaterial senses, senses that can see and hear and experience without the use of the body. And through those subtle senses, we can experience these signals of eternity, of a world that's not subject to death. It's not a mortal world, it's an eternal world. Howard, you would read, please?
The truth mind could not know unveils its face. We hear what mortal ears have never heard. We feel what earthly sense has never felt. We love what common hearts repel and dread.
Yes. So in those deep inner indrawn states, we become aware of a truth that mind could not know. That truth reveals itself to us. We can, with the subtle hearing, we can hear what mortal ears, physical ears, have never heard. And we can feel what our earthly sense, our material senses, have never felt. And we may find ourselves attracted, intensely attracted, by things that to our outer being may be fearful, things that repel, that our surface hearts push away, they dread. I think one of the first signs of an inner turn towards the spiritual life is when we no longer want to be surrounded by lots and lots of people and continually entertained and occupied, that instead we want these inner silences and the chance of experiencing something completely different, where there's no fear of loneliness anymore. Alice, you would go on from there, please.
Our minds hush to a bright, omniscient. A voice calls from the chambers of the soul. We need the ecstasy of Godhead's touch in golden privacies of immortal fire.
So these are the kind of things that can happen. We find the mind just falling silent, and in that silence it may get a touch of an omniscient state in which everything can be known. Or we become aware of a voice calling to us from the chambers, the secret rooms where our soul lives. We may feel the bliss of the touch of the divine coming to us in golden privacies of immortal fire. Fire means intensity and energy and also aspiration. Gomsun.
These signs are native to a larger self that lies within us, all by ourselves unseen. Only sometimes a holier influence comes, a tide of mightier surges fills our lives, and a diviner presence moves the soul. For through the earthly coverings, something breaks, a grace and beauty of spiritual light, the momentum of celestial fire.
Yes. So if these experiences come to us, or the fact that these experiences come to human beings, these are signs of a larger self, something much vaster, more powerful than our ordinary outer appearance. That larger self is living within us, although we don't see it. We don't often feel it. Only sometimes from that larger self an influence comes to us, a holier influence, an influence that brings a touch of divinity. Or what happens is maybe that a great surge of energy comes, like the tide of the ocean sweeping in and carries up our lives and helps us to do things that we would never have imagined that we could do. And we feel that our soul is being moved by a diviner presence than our ordinary surface self. Through these earthly coverings, these physical coverings, something different breaks through, bringing a grace and beauty of spiritual light, and something like a tongue of flame, of heavenly fire, and that tongue is murmuring. There's a special sound communicating something to us. Kamla.
Ourself and a higher stranger whom we feel. It is and acts unseen, as if it were not. It follows the line of self-internal truth. It seems to perish with its modern creed.
Yes, this is the larger self. This is the holier influence. It is ourself, but we may feel it when it contacts us like a great stranger. That larger self, that holier influence, exists and acts unseen. We are not aware of it. It's as if it were not there at all. No? He says that this larger self of ours, it follows the line of sempiternal birth, yet seems to perish with its mortal frame. This part of us doesn't perish. It only seems to perish. We think that, the soul has gone. The body dies. It's not like that. That larger self goes on and on and on, experiencing many different births. The whole line of births going on and on and on. It only seems to perish with its mortal frame. Will you read, please?
Assured of the apocalypse to be, it reckons not the moments and the hours. Great, patient, calm, it sees the centuries pass, awaiting the slow miracle of our change in the sure deliberate process of world force and the long march of all believing time.
Yes. So this is this larger self. It is absolutely sure, it has no doubt that there will be eventually the revelation of the truth of everything, the apocalypse. It can mean like the end of the world, but the original meaning of the word is a revelation, a darshan, fulfillment. So that larger self, it's not worried about the passing of the moments and the hours, whether they go fast or slow. It is great, it is patient. Calmly, it watches the centuries pass, awaiting the slow miracle of our change. This change that is happening in us and in the world, happening so slowly we don't see it happening, but it is happening in the sure, deliberate process of world force. There's an energy driving the world, and that energy has a purpose and an intention, and it knows exactly what needs to be done to bring about that apocalypse. But all this is happening in the long march of all-revealing time. We don't see everything all at once. It gets slowly, gradually unfolded. But time will reveal everything. Arsu, will you read? Top of page 49. 80.
It is the origin and the master clue, a silence overhead, an inner voice, a living image seated in the heart, an unwalled wideness and a fathomless point. The truth of all these cryptic shows in space, the real towards which our strivings move, the secret, grandiose meaning of our lives.
Thank you. So that larger self, that presence, that influence, that's our origin. It's the origin of all this. And if we can find it, it's the master clue which will help us to find our way and understand everything. It expresses itself to us in different ways, as a silence overhead that we become aware of in special moments, an inner voice, a living image seated in the heart. At special moments, we may see that living image seated there. Sometimes we feel that self, that presence, as an unwalled wideness, something with no limits. But it can also express itself as a point, a dimensionless point, which is fathomless. It's so deep, we can never get to the bottom of that point. That master clue, that presence, that larger self, is the truth, the reality which is upholding all these cryptic shows in space. Something that's cryptic is mysterious and puzzling. There are people who like to do crossword puzzles, and if they're good at crossword puzzles, they like to do cryptic crossword puzzles, one where the clues themselves are puzzles. So all these things that we see, we think we see the outsides of them and we think we know what they are. But actually they're mysterious and deep and bewildering and puzzling. They're concealing this truth which is supporting all of them. This real, which is not an illusion, not a dream, truly real, that reality towards which all our efforts are moving. We may think that we try so hard to get certain things done and that we fail, it's useless, we get discouraged. But again and again in the poem, Aurobindo tells us that all our efforts are moving towards some great fulfillment. That reality, that truth, that origin is the secret meaning of our lives. And it's a grandiose meaning. It's an enormous, powerful, noble meaning. Devin.
A treasure of honey in the combs of God, a splendor burning in a tenebrous glow. It is a glory of the flame of God, a golden fountain of the world's delight, an immortality covered in the cave of death, the shade of our unborn divinity.
Yes. This larger self which dwells within us by ourselves unseen. It's a treasure of honey, of delight. Bees keep their honey in combs. So the combs of God are full of ananda. And this larger self is of that nature of bliss. It's hidden in a tenebrous cloak, this disguise of a physical body, which is shadowy, dark. No? But within it, there's this splendor burning. It is our glory of the flame of God, all the energy and light and warmth of the divine. It's our golden fountain of the world's delight. All delight of the world is pouring out from that fountain. That presence is an immortality. Cowled. Cowled is like cloaked. A cowl actually is a cloak with a big hood covering the face as well as the head. An immortality cowled in the cape of death. This physical body that has to die, that's our cloak of death. But within it is this immortal presence. And that presence is the shape, the form of our unborn divinity, the divine being that we are going to be, that we are in reality and that we are going to be able to manifest eventually. Joel.
It guards for us our feet in depths within, where sleeps the eternal sea of transient things. Always we bear in us a magic key, concealed in life's hermetic envelope.
Thank you. So that presence, that larger self, is protecting for us our fate, our true fate, not what happens to us, the happenings of life, but our eventual destiny. It's hidden in our own inner depths. There's sleeping the eternal seed of things that are transient, that happen and pass. Always we are carrying in us this magic key, hidden in this hermetic envelope. An envelope, of course, is a covering. Something that's hermetic is sealed very tightly. It's watertight, even airtight. Nothing can get in. So it's really sealed up, that key, that secret. Stanley.
Burning witness in the sanctuary regards to time and the blind walls of form. The timeless light is in his hidden eyes. He sees the secret things no words can speak, and knows the goal of the unconscious world, and the heart of the mystery of the journeying years.
Yes. So this is that key, that magic key. Within us there's this witness, this glowing, fiery presence that is watching everything from its sanctuary, from its secret, sacred, safe place. The sanctuary is the most sacred place in the temple or the church. No? There's a presence there, and that presence is watching. Aurobindo uses this word regards in its French sense, watching, looking. He is watching through time. He can look through all these walls of form and see the truth and reality that is supporting them. In the eyes of the hidden eyes of that witness, there's a timeless light. It's not limited by time or space. He sees the secret things no words can speak. And he knows the goal of the unconscious world. We may be unsure whether our world has any goal at all. Nowadays it's quite unfashionable to think that there's any purpose in our universe. It's all accidental. No? But Aurobindo tells us there is a goal, and that larger self that dwells within us by ourselves unseen is aware of that goal. It's aware of the heart of the mystery of the journeying years. Where are all these years going to? They're moving towards this great apocalypse, this great revelation, this great fulfillment. We could read them together, if you like. In moments when the inner lamps are lit, and the life's cherished guests are left outside, our spirit sits alone and speaks to its gulfs. A wider consciousness opens then its doors, invading from spiritual silences a ray of the timeless glory stoops awhile to commune with our seized, illumined clay, and leaves its huge white stamp upon our lives. In the oblivious field of mortal mind, revealed to the closed prophet eyes of trance, or in some deep internal solitude, witnessed by a strange immaterial sense, the signals of eternity appear. The truth mind could not know unveils its face. We hear what mortal ears have never heard. We feel what earthly sense has never felt. We love what common hearts repel and dread. Our minds hush to a bright omniscient. A voice calls from the chambers of the soul. We meet the ecstasy of the Godhead's touch in golden privacies of immortal fire. These signs are native to a larger self that lives within us by ourselves unseen. Only sometimes a holier influence comes, a tide of mightier surgings bears our lives, and a diviner presence moves the soul. Or through the earthly coverings something breaks, a grace and beauty of spiritual light, the murmuring tongue of a celestial fire. Ourself and a high stranger whom we feel, it is and acts unseen as if it were not. It follows the line of sempiternal birth, yet seems to perish with its mortal frame. Assured of the apocalypse to be, it reckons not the moments and the hours. Great, patient, calm, it sees the centuries pass, awaiting the slow miracle of our change in the sure, deliberate process of world force and the long march of all-revealing time. It is the origin and the master clue. A silence overhead, an inner voice, a living image seated in the heart, an unwalled wideness and a fathomless point. The truth of all these cryptic shows in space, the real towards which our strivings move, the secret, grandiose meaning of our lives. A treasure of honey in the combs of God, a splendor burning in a tenebrous cloak. It is our glory of the flame of God, our golden fountain of the world's delight. An immortality cowled in the cape of death, the shape of our unborn divinity. It guards for us our fate in depths within, where sleeps the eternal seed of transient things. Always we bear in us a magic key, concealed in life's hermetic envelope, a burning witness in the sanctuary regards through time and the blind walls of form. A timeless light is in his hidden eyes. He sees the secret things no words can speak, and knows the goal of the unconscious world and the heart of the mystery of the journeying years.